I'm Angelo Robles, founder and chairman of Family Office Association. My podcast is Effective Family Office, and my book, Effective Family Office Best Practices and Beyond, just released. We hope you have a chance to learn a little bit more and hopefully purchase. I'm joined today by Mark Haltsema, advisor to global single-family offices. A very important part, Mark, as we discussed, you need to have a compelling vision, you need to have the mission, you need to have the right structure. Certainly, we're all big believers in having the right board and committees, getting the right people in place. Jim Collins could talk eloquently about that, right. No one else. But there comes a point when simply, what are the goals and how are we going to have a process to our outcome? And a discussion is bound to turn, do we insource or do we outsource? My opinion is, if you're going to have a single family office, and initially probably pretty narrow on what it's going to do, it better be really good at it, or strive to be excellent or great. Otherwise, that service that still may be needed by the family, they may be better off, and maybe you're the liaison as the single family office, but finding another firm, outsourcing, that lives and breathes and has the excellence in service to be great at it. Is it quite the same complete control as within the single family office? No, but at the earlier stages or smaller stages of a family office, there may not be another choice. So I'd like to have a really interesting discussion. I have a lot of comments on this one on insource or outsource, but why don't we start with your open commentary?
Well, I believe that the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And so as a family is setting up a family office, again, going back to blocking and tackling, the building blocks, mission statement, charter, board composition, the operating agreement, et cetera, all those are important pieces. But the family has to decide really what they're committed to, okay? And part of that conversation is going to be, okay, this is what we envision over the next 3, 5, 10 years. What team do we need? What kind of cohesion do we need? And the vast majority of family offices, Angelo, are not going to have the bandwidth to hire a lot of staff, okay? They'll have certain people, many of them may be family members. And so by definition, in order to be able to achieve excellence, they're going to have to look outside because it's just too costly, too cumbersome, too much regulation, particularly if you're representing more than one family, then you get into issues with Dodd-Frank and representing other families in their investment portfolio. But we're not going to go down that regulatory road for today anyway. So keeping it small, keeping it very, very tightly wound in terms of who within the office is assigned to or is tasked with accomplishing certain tasks. But at the end of the day, those family offices, middle market family offices, and middle market is subject to definition, are going to have to look outside for the investment function, for tax, legal, accounting, banking, and identifying a firm or an individual that can really tackle that for the family externally is going to be really important. I go back again to the chief of staff function. Being able to identify an individual or a firm that can take a 360-degree view of where the family is today, where the family wants to be, and how that external firm can execute on behalf of the family is part of the process. And how it evolves for any individual family will depend on the family, okay? Some are going to be much more complicated, more complex than others. Others may be more straightforward. They've had a liquidity event, they have a certain amount of wealth, and they're like a child learning how to walk in terms of, okay, this family office world, guide us. And that's where the external firm or the chief of staff can really be proactive in terms of advising the family as to what lies ahead of the curve and how can that external firm or individual assist the family to get to where it needs to be. And maybe over time the family office grows and they can bring some of those services in-house, but at the outset, the vast majority of family offices are going to need to have really superb, objective, independent, outside advice that is really supportive of the family and its mission.
Which means they do have a responsibility for diligence on outside providers, especially if they're going to be involved in that relationship. And I don't mean to make it too much of a technological conversation today. We'll save that for a different time. But in today's world, with effectiveness and efficiencies, there's so many different software and programs out there where, whether it's with the family, with the SFO, the family, the SFO, and outside quote unquote providers, a way to have more constant communication and, maybe a better word, project management. Trello, which would probably be among the more simple programs to use, or there's many that are more advanced, from Basecamp to potentially even Salesforce. So again, I don't mean to hijack the conversation and make it too technical, but it's in some ways, and this relates a little bit to the virtual family office, it's never been easier in terms of that level of project management and communication with those quote unquote outside the SFO. Let's stick to Insource, outsource, and I'm going to touch upon this a little bit later when I talk potentially about the fallacy of quote unquote A players. But I think a grave challenge that family offices have, that you hinted at, is they can't do everything. And they're going to potentially look to bring in, I want to bring in the best of the best. Well, do you really? Your earlier stage in your family office, you need to get that right. You need loyalty, you need trust, you need people that are good communicators. Those are the anchors. You need character in the quality of your SFO relationships. There are some people in certain things on legal, tax, and investing that may be a wonderful talent. Wonderful. One, they may be too expensive for what the family office wants to pay for. And what's wrong, and my thinking has changed a little bit, with outsourcing them. If you bring them in, let's forget about the money part. One, they may have a big ego, and they may affect the culture of your family office, and that affects the attitude of really everyone. Two, you may take them away and make them too cocooned inside your little island of the SFO, when they may be better off having a broader experience with other billion-dollar and like-minded families, and you use them as needed. What's your thinking on that?
Well, in addition to all the other factors that are important for a family office and a family office advisor, is confidentiality. Being able to vouchsafe the privacy and the information of the family is incredibly important for people working both within the family office and externally. In addition to diligence and communication, confidentiality is going to be utmost important for both people working within the family office, and most especially for people outside the family office. But the advantage of outsourcing to a trusted advisor, someone or a group that really has the best interests of the family at heart, is going to be a function of, it helps to break down that information silo. Okay, so you may have the best and the brightest, and in some cases the best and the brightest may come and work with inside the family office. But let's say, for example, you have the best and the brightest, or someone who's really an A-star, who happens to sit outside the family office in a law firm or a consulting firm or a wealth management firm. He or she is going to, again, maintaining confidentiality, is going to be able to, if you will, play devil's advocate with the family around some of the ideas and some of the decisions they're wanting to make. Because that person has been through the battleground, has seen different stories, can add perspective to what the family is facing, which sometimes you're not going to get if you're going to have someone inside the family office, unless he or she is extraordinarily proactive about attending FOA and interacting with other families. Whereas someone who's sitting outside the family office, again, maintaining the confidentiality, client confidentiality on behalf of other families, may be able to share war stories or best practices, and really help the family much more proactively, sitting outside rather than sitting inside.
Indeed. Again, there's no doubt that you lose a little bit of control and arguably privacy by outsourcing and outsourcing too much, but especially initially, as you're identifying the goals that you want internally your people to do, and you're really clarifying the leadership and culture, and again, getting their character to be impeccable, loyal and trustworthy. And that works both ways. The family also needs to treat them right, to compensate them right, and show respect for their capabilities. when you outsource for the reasons that I noted and you noted, and I think that is needed in certainly some, arguably many cases, for the reasons that we noted. You may not have the resources to compensate them. You may be too siloed and isolated, and maybe they get not as sharp on their given skill set, and there's value to them being outside the family, quote unquote, and you bring them in as needed. But once you start to have a lot that is outsourced, I mean, do you really have a single family office, or is your single family office, and there may be nothing wrong with this, whatever it is, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people in the family office, is their job now just really servicing the outsourced relationships and communicating with the family?
Well, I think the outsourced relationship in an ideal world may help to create community for the family. In other words, depending on the mindset of the outside advisor and the firm that the family uses, if the outside advisor is really committed to addressing the challenges that the family faces and enabling opportunities, in other words, being a very proactive advocate on behalf of the family, that helps to build community, okay? And so perhaps you're moving a little bit from being a classic standalone SFO to more of a multifamily office structure, okay? By relying on the outside firm. And that's not a bad result either, okay? Again, I happen to believe, and here I'm going to get into some trouble with some of my friends, is that size is the enemy of creativity. So the more boutique, the more specialized a firm, whether it be the family office or the outside firm advising the family office, to the extent that that is a boutique platform, there's a lot more flexibility, there's more maneuverability in terms of the advice, in terms of the level of communication, the level of detail, the level of attention that the family's getting. So all that works really well. So yes, to your point, the outside advisor, the chief of staff, the external chief of staff to a family, that may be a good result for smaller single family offices that really rely on that. And if that outside firm is operating the way it should, maintaining confidentiality, but creating a community of like-minded families, because that outside advisor sits at the hub of the wheel, can look 360 degrees around at different families. And again, if he or she is being proactive, they're going to bring families together. And that's a good result too.
That is, maybe in my closing comment on insource versus outsource, and I kind of began with, I think it is often needed, and to some degree is a good thing. I know some of my questions and my commentaries may seem a little bit the opposite, and I'm going to do it again. If you're doing the SFO right, and you have the right protocol, you got total control and privacy, and cybersecurity now is so important. And we may discuss a little bit later relative to certain protocols, the cloud, internal servers. Do you really know what your outside providers are doing? This requires your family office and those you trust to do diligence and probably annually do a little bit of we got to know what's going on here. And even when you do that, it's not quite the same as if you have that internal and you have a certain process to do that. Now, you may need to spend a lot more money internal to get that right and to do additional services that you're bringing in. So again, this is an age-old problem in our community of insource versus outsource. The verbiage, which I'm not 100% on board with yet, a virtual family office, although we have covered that before, Mark and I as well, relate to this, but we're getting there. From the project management software that I noted, communication protocol, there's even things like Proton Mail out of Switzerland that are 100% secure and encrypted that you could even have not only internally for your family office, but select advisors. If you're really, really concerned about privacy and security issues, it's getting better potentially in terms of where even technology, AI, artificial intelligence could take us. And it's going to be an interesting road as we're going down in the next couple of years in our community.
It's going to be absolutely a fascinating road. Everything seems to be changing at the speed of light. But just to bring the conversation full circle, where we started was in today's podcast was about accountability and holding people to different standards. So as families look at external firms to provide certain services to them, and here I'm wearing my lawyer's hat, this is all going to be contractual, okay? It's all going to be set forth in an agreement in terms of what the outside advisor is expected to do and the safeguards that the advisor is going to take to protect the family's confidentiality and privacy and very sensitive information. And that should all be part of, if you will, a regular recalibrating of the relationship. And I like to think that an outside advisor should not be afraid to be reviewed by the client. Wearing my big firm hat, because I've spent a good swath of my career working for large organizations, where we as the advisors would receive feedback from the client, 360-degree feedback from the client in terms of how we were doing with the client. So I'm a great believer that in a dynamic family office world, whether it be a virtual family office or external consultants, that people should be held accountable, and there should be something of a report card for advisors. How that is structured, how you develop KPIs for outside advisors, right. Key performance indicators, is going to be a function of what the family wants to get out of that relationship. But being able to build that in, again, to hold people accountable, it's probably true of people within the family office as well, but most certainly is going to be true of the external lawyers, accountants, bankers, advisors, et cetera, that are looking into the family office. So as things become much more technology driven, where information can easily slip between the cup and the lip, having that accountability, both contractually from a legal standpoint, but also from a relational standpoint. Because again, if the family wants to build, or I should say the outside advisor wants to build a long-term relationship with the family, they want to build in that trust and confidence. And part of that equation is really going to be a function of being on the same side of the line as the family. So I think as family offices become much more technology driven, much more focused on cybersecurity, having that relational element to their outside advisors is going to continue to be important. That's never going to go away. Things will change, but that's not going to change.
I'm Angelo Robles, founder and chairman of Family Office Association. Effective Family Office is my podcast, and my book of the same name, Effective Family Office. We hope you enjoyed our video podcast and our series of video podcasts as well. You can reach out to me directly at angelo@angelorobles.com or through Family Office Association, angelo@familyofficeassociation.com, or for some of you, perhaps easier, simply on social media, where we maintain, like Mark, an active LinkedIn presence, as well as Twitter. So reach out to us on YouTube and on Twitter. We are very simply Family Office. Thank you very much.